As we know it, a sharp debate has erupted across Nigeria following a proposal by the Revenue Mobilisation, Allocation and Fiscal Commission to raise the salaries of President Bola Tinubu and other political office holders, spurred by claims that the president earns a paltry sum of 18 million naira per year amid sweeping economic hardship. Critics are accusing the commission and the broader political class of insensitivity and misplaced priorities. This morning on the show, we're joined by Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, who's an investment banking executive development economist also. Thank you so much, Nnaemeka, for coming around to discuss this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, the commission says the president currently earns about 18 million naira a year. Do you take that as a story that sells?
It's not a story that sells, because we know that 18 million naira per annum is just what is on paper. And, it's very unfortunate that we are discussing increasing salary for the political class when we know, look at the 2025 budget, the amount of money that was budgeted. In fact, the amount of money budgeted for newspaper alone was over 18 million. Does Mr. President read 18 million naira worth of newspaper? We all know the truth. See, we expect those in public space to respect the sensitivities of Nigerians, to look at the mood of the nations, and try as much as possible to be sensitive, at least for once. Occupying the presidency of Nigeria is not the same thing as occupying the presidency of other countries. We all know that practically most of the political office holders in Nigeria are practically taken care of by the state. Everything that they consume, even the air they breathe, will pay for it. So it is very, very insensitive of Ramfat to be talking about increasing salaries of. See, if we want to tie the salary of, if they want us to increase the salary of the president and that of the other political officers, let us tie it to productivity. I'll give you an example. The US president collects salaries of about $400,000 every year. The US generates revenue of about $30 trillion. As of 2024, the US generated $30.5 trillion. I'll also give you an example. The budget of the United States federal government last year was $6.9 trillion. What was only earmarked for the National Assembly of the US, both the upper and lower chamber, was $3 billion, which is 0.0048%. If we are to apply the same yardstick in Nigeria, the National Assembly of Nigeria shouldn't have collected anything more than 15 billion naira as total allocation to them, unlike the 348 billion that they allocated to themselves. You see, I see this as very insensitive. I see this as very, very callous. Is anyway, they will still go ahead and do it. I don't, whether we agree or we don't agree, whether we are angry or we're not angry, but we know that 18 million naira is not even up to what Mr. President spends in 1 minute occupying us. We know the truth.
Okay, so you said that we should tie it to productivity, but you would agree with me that looking at the statistics, according to the CBN, we understand that reserves have increased by over $40 billion. When you look at the federal allocation, it has also increased based on the policy of government. You look at the customs, that has actually also generated about that is 7 trillion. Just in about a month thereabouts, compared to 1.35 trillion. So that is some sort of growth in some ways that should give some sort of influence or lending to the fact that if the president is doing well with his policies and his economic measures, then that should also reflect on his take-home pay per month.
What are the components of the foreign reserve, if I may ask? What are the components of that $40 billion foreign reserve? Can we kindly have a breakdown? You see, it's a very funny thing that we mouth in entities. So let me tell you this. The only thing that we have going for us is that Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, in his wisdom, have applied one of the few monetary instruments available to him to stabilize the FX market. At least the FX market has been stabilized at the 1500 levels. And that is why today we can say for a short certainty, investors can look into Nigeria and say, okay, if I come into Nigeria, exchange rate has held stable over the last 6 months, over the last 1 year. But at what cost? NPR is at 27.5%, which is the benchmark interest rate upon which every other lender will add a premium. If you go to the commercial banks to borrow money, you cannot borrow money at anything less than 30%, no matter the tenor, which is detrimental to the real sector growth. The foreign reserve, look at the component. What is our external debt position? Our external debt position is almost at over $46 billion. Over $46 billion. You are borrowing money to show up your reserve. Does that make sense? It does not make sense. If, for example, we are producing massively and we are exporting more than we are importing, and the reserves are increasing based on this, then we will have a reason to clap and rejoice. But it's not the case.
I understand. Okay, so let's look at it from this angle, because we understand that the NLC has also berated the commission for proposing this salary increase. Now, the president currently earns, breaking it down, 1.5 million naira monthly, while ministers receive less than 1 million naira, figures that have remained unchanged since 2008. So if minimum wage has increased from 33,000 to 77,000 for workers, why not the political elites?
Because the workers are only restricted to the salaries that they collect. The political class keep on deceiving themselves. The political class do not even depend. Look at the National Assembly. There's nobody in the National Assembly that does not walk away every month with nothing less than 13 million naira. On paper, we sign for them 1 million. But in reality, none of them walks away with anything less than 13, 20 million every month. The other day, one member of the National Assembly from the Southwest mentioned to his people that none of them collects anything less than 1 billion naira every year as constituency project allocations, which most of them inflation. We know this for a fact. If we want to fix Nigeria, we need to go back to the 1960 constitutional framework that tied the pegs of office of the National Assembly members and political office holders to that of the civil service. That is the only way these things can work. When they begin to feel the pinch the way the civil servants are feeling the pinch, each and every one of them will be motivated to ensure that Nigeria becomes a productive hub, not a consumption, rent-seeking driven hub.
Okay, now let's also probe further. Now, teachers in Nigeria reportedly earn between 30 and 80 naira monthly, while doctors earn around 200,000, 500,000, depending on where they work in the sector. Now, when you compare that to salaries and allowances of holders of political offices, is the issue actually about salary raise or social inequality? The issue here has to do with the purchasing power of even what we are collecting. The purchasing power on what those in today's Nigeria, let me tell you for a fact, by the World Bank indicator, anybody who earns anything less than $64.50 should actually be subjected to social welfare intervention, is living under poverty. That simply means anybody who earns less than 110,000 or 100,000 naira is under poverty. By this measurement alone, most civil servants are supposed to be receiving social interventions because they are within and under the poverty threshold. The problem is the purchasing power that has been lowered because of the erosion of naira. I give you an example. In between 2005 to 2009, as a middle management investment banking executive in Nigeria, my take-home pay, net pay, could buy 3 brand new cars. I am not kidding you. Because we had 4 million middle class population. And when we talk about middle class population, we're talking about people that earn between $90,000 to $170,000 annual emolument. And that was under the Obasanjo and Yar'Adua regime. Because the economy was booming. The economy was growing at an average of about 6.5% per annum. It was an all-inclusive growth that drifted down to the people. A bag of 50 kg right there was selling for less than 6,000 naira. Today, the minimum wage we're talking about cannot even buy a bag of rice.
Tell me how a family of 4 can survive even on a minimum wage of 300,000 naira. Based on today in Nigeria, go and look at developed economies or other developing economies. The percentage of people's take-home pay that are spent on food is between 10 to 30%. In Nigeria, the average Nigerian, over 197 million Nigerians spend almost about 80% of their salaries on food. We're not talking about other physiological needs. What we need to do here is to boost productivity, to revert back to the 1963 constitutional framework, to allow and engendered meritocracy, excellence, and productivity. When we begin to produce more than we consume, prices will crash and our naira will gain more value.
So basically, we shouldn't be even concerned about the possibility of these increases that could fuel inflation, because you're talking about eras whereby inflation was relatively low and manageable compared to what we see in the markets. Now, if we are clamoring for an increase in wages and everybody's talking about increase, what about inflation in a market that is largely unregulated?
Inflation is here because we have refused to be productive. Inflation is very simple, defined as when you have few goods being pursued with so much money in circulation. I'll give you a clear example. Today, a 25-liter gallon of palm oil is selling for 60,000 naira from 33,000 naira 6 months ago. And this is the same country that used to control 45% of the global palm oil supply market. We consume about 2.4 million tons. We produce only 1,050,000 tons. And people says it's very common sense that for us to cover the domestic supply gap that will help us crash the price, we just need to do new 500,000 to 700,000 hectares of terra palm plantation that will require about 90 to 120 million trees and 1,680 cottage factories that can process 20,000 liters of palm oil every day. And these things we can do over the next 5 years, mostly with the governors and local government chairmen of the palm belt of the southwest and southeast and south and middle belt driving it. We've gone to these guys and we have shared with them proposals on how they can do what we call the missions, community diaspora, private public partnership arrangement that can help us cover the domestic gap, that will ensure productivity, wrap up dollar revenue of about $5 billion, cover the domestic supply gap, and create 3 million jobs over the next 5 years. But these governors and local government chairmen are not interested. You cannot stop inflation without the physical side playing their roles. And that is why when I just is in a mess.
But then why are they not interested? Since we know that these are the empirical solutions to the issue around productivity and the value of our currency, why are they not interested?
They're not interested because most of them did not enter political office for the purpose of serving. In the First Republic, even Second Republic, we have people like Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, we have Latif Jokonde, we have Desamon Bakwe, we had Awolowo, we had Tafawa Balewa, we had Ahmad Bello. We had men who were there to serve their people. Their interest was paramount for the satisfaction of the interest of their people. Look at Michael Obiaraeri, a 39-year-old medical doctor became premier in 1959. In 7 years, he built 214-kilometer agro-industrial belt. What was his goal, his one policy objective? To put affordable food on the table of every individual of the whole Eastern region and to improve on their social welfare standards. He accomplished it without the fossil fuel revenue. That what we have today, 99% of those who occupy political office are called the 3 tiers and arms of government. Rather incompetent, insensitive, reckless, wicked, and unpatriotic. Most of them are just there for what they, just like hirelings, for what they will eat, what they will steal, and what they will destroy. The solutions to make Nigeria a $1 trillion economy over the next 5 years is there. These guys do not care.
All right, so you've actually hammered more on productivity and meritocracy. I'd like you to brood over this with me. Probably this could be a solution. Now, the Constitution gives the Commission, that is RMAFC, the power to review salaries. Now, should it, alongside the legislature, focus on possibly cutting down on allowances and instead redirecting that into increasing wages rather than encumbering the executive purse?
Take time to go and research on budgets. Reports on the 2025 federal government budget. Over 7 trillion naira items were criminally inserted, all intended to be looted. Let me tell you the truth. of the collective 45 to 53 trillion naira budget that was passed across the 3 tiers of government in Nigeria, every year over 60% of those budgets are looted. If the resources of Nigeria are prudently allocated to enhancing the HDIs of the average Nigeria, this country will become a first world country within the next 20 years. The problem we have is that over 60% of what we budget annually, either borrowed or received, are looted into private pockets. It's a criminal enterprise and industry that is thriving. And that is why whenever you see anybody who is competent, who is prudent, who is excellent, who has the mindset of working for the people around the corner, every one of them will gang up together to cut the person to size. It's not about party. It's about individual mindset. Basically, what we have today in Nigeria, I'm sorry to use that word, how people are classified as mostly political bandits. They are not different like from Shekau in the bush or any of those bandits terrorizing the southeast. It's all about what they will get. They don't have the interest of people at heart.
Okay, so we are talking about a country with a government that is roughing through an almost 150 trillion naira debt. It's one of the things that you mentioned a while ago. And they are not even showing signs of putting a break on these borrowings. And this would only mean that Nigeria really doesn't have the money, whether for looting, whether for illegal budget insertions, or for increases. What precedent is being set?
The truth is, like I said, I am not against borrowing. Leverage financing is one of the key financing pathway to development economy. If you look back in 2007, there was a global infrastructure development master plan that was developed that stated clear that for Nigeria to move from our current shithole jungle status to a second world economy, we need to have critical investment of over $3 trillion in the next 30 years. That is $100 billion total investment unbroken, sustained over the next 30 years in the key and critical sector of the economy. $100 billion is not something that can be generated through physical revenue. It will come through a combination of either borrowing or through diverse PPP frameworks. But the problem we have is that we are borrowing to consume, we are borrowing to loot, we are borrowing to waste. With $39 billion, we can do over 12,000 kilometers. With $15 billion, they borrow to do 700 kilometers coastal road that leads to nowhere. With $15 billion, we can do 12,000 kilometers, 3 to 4,000 kilometers. Standard gauge rail network that cut across from the whole of from all the way to Port Harcourt is crossing the southwest and the southeast of Nigeria.
So basically, we are talking about
prioritizing. We are not prioritizing. We are borrowing to waste.
So that is the problem. How do we bring about? Because we've talked about it so many times anyway. How do we bring about accountability? How do we hold these political office holders who sit over these largesse or this money? How do we hold them by juggle and make them do the right thing?
How we hold them is that we need to keep on talking, we need to keep on begging, we need to keep on exercising our franchise as citizens during the elections to ensure that not only do we vote the right people, we work our legs off to protect our votes. You know, when we talk about, oh, these people are doing this thing because they were not elected, they read themselves in. They are not ghosts, they did not read themselves in. We read them in. In Nigeria today, to run an election, you need about 2 million people. 178,000 polling booths that have at least 4 people manning it. 8,809 ward collection centers, 774 local government collection centers, and 36 state collection centers, which are 7. If 60% of those who man those places and the INEC decide today, and even the police and the military officers that they want to do the right thing and not collect wings and behave like Professor Nnaemeka in Niger State, when the politicians realize clearly that it's no longer going to be business as usual, that votes count, and the right people begin to get into place of power and authority, Nigeria will be fixed. Now, see, look at what Lateef Jokonde did in 4 years in Lagos State. Look at what Samuel Bako did in Imo State in 4 years. And look at what Michael Okpara did in 6 years. We get the kind of fossil fuel revenue we have now. It will give you an insight into what Nigeria can become when we begin to allow men with competence, with authority, with selflessness, with integrity into place of power and authority at the commanding heights of our public office spaces.
All right, so let's quickly look at this. Now, reports suggest that Nigerian lawmakers already get allowances running into tens of millions annually. It's one of the things that you mentioned, far higher than, their base salaries. Now, should we even have a breakdown of these perks before anyone talks about raise? Just in about 30 seconds, because it's not enough to demand accountability, but we need the facts to back up these claims and these demands.
Take your time to review the 343 billion naira that National Assembly pardoned for themselves. It will give you a deep insight into the kind of rot in Nigeria. And let me tell you, unfortunately, they are all busy playing politics. It's like Alibaba and the 40-member gang. Each of them there's nobody out of the crowd across the party line who has that little conscience break to say and sit back and say, hey, what we are doing is it right? It's a concern. So you don't have accountability when you have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 in a crowd of, it's like the time in Sodom and Gomorrah when Abraham was trying to beg God. He said, God, if I can find 50, God said, if I see 50, I will save the city. It got to 5, and God could not see 5. It's a similar thing happening in Nigeria today. You will hardly see up to 5 of the political members who had decided to be different. It's the same thing, all of them from practically A to Z.
Well, there's a lot that needs to be done when it comes to not even about revenue generation, but about expenditure, so to speak, on the part of government. Thank you so much, Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, investment banking executive and a development economist, for sharing your thoughts with us on the show. We appreciate your contribution.